to Cooking with Hermes Trismegismus. Just kidding. Welcome to Hermetic Journeys. I'm your host, Tony G. And we are going to talk about cooking in this video. It's all about cooking, all right? What's that about? Well, first of all, before we continue, I'd like to thank all of you who have subscribed, new subscribers. Thank you so very much. It's so heartwarming, and I just love it. In any case, we got a lot of stuff to talk about here, so we're going to get right to this. Now, normally I use images from Adam McLean, who is an incredible artist and an alchemical scholar, all right, from his alchemy website. But this time I thought I would try coloring the emblem myself. So what you see here is the result of my attempt at coloring this emblem, Emblem 22. Hope you like it. So let's get going here. We see a pregnant woman, right, in front of a raging fire, and there's a barrel of 2 fish behind her and a cat who's ignoring the fish, which is kind of strange in and of itself. And a beautiful, very, very beautiful domestic scene here, right? So what's going on? I mean, is it that simple? Well, you know, these emblems are never that simple, right? So let's have our dear Count Michael, read the motto to us. Take it away, Count.
When you have obtained the white lead, then do women's work. That is to say, cook.
Okay, first let me comment on this particular motto. I don't think Count Michael is making any comments concerning the role of women in the 1600s, although they did not play a major role in society, unless you're Queen Elizabeth, of course. But in any case, I don't think he's making a comment here. This is all highly symbolic, so let's kind of keep that in mind. And as we study this emblem, we'll see how this unfolds. It's really very, very interesting. First, I'm going to discuss what I believe to be very important symbolic aspects to this particular emblem. And then we're going to have the Hermetic Journeys team chime in, right? Maddi, Nathan, Tamas, and of course, Steve Kalec prepared a video specific to this emblem. It's really, really, really cool about some work that he's done in the past using the alchemical formula that's involved in this emblem. And we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, so hang in there. Now, I believe the pregnant woman represents the alchemical experiment. What do I mean by that? Well, if we go back to Emblem 2, the earth is its nurse, all right? We see a woman representing the earth nursing the philosophic child, right? So the woman is nurturing the philosopher's stone. In other words, earth has all the elements required to create the philosopher's stone. You know, the mercury, antimony, gold, whatever, anything involved in creating the stone. Now here in Emblem 22, I believe the pregnant woman represents the same thing. She is nurturing the child, okay? The feminine aspect, nurturing the philosophic child. That's what I think is going on here with the pregnant woman. I think that's what she symbolizes. Really, really, really important, I think. Now, oh, and by the way, say hello to Theo. This is Theo. She doesn't like to be picked up, but she's really a sweetheart. Yes, she is. Say hi, Theo. Yeah, okay. How you doing? I'll put her down because she's uncomfortable. Needless to say, there are some very important aspects to this emblem that I do want to discuss. Of course, the pregnant woman, then also the barrel with the 2 fish in it. Now, if you look closely, you'll notice that the fish are swimming in opposite directions. What really struck me is there's another alchemical text known as the Book of Lamspring, and that was written by Lucas Janus, probably a pseudonym, right, in 1625. Now, Count Michael references this particular work many, many times, all right? And in Emblem 1 of the Book of Lamspring, we find, 2 fish swimming in opposite directions in a lake. Really, really interesting. Now, the Book of Lamspring is really about the resolution of the polarities within us. So let's take a look at the motto for this particular emblem in the Book of Lamspring, because I think it's going to give us some insight into Emblem 22. The motto says, "The sea is the body, the 2 fishes are soul and spirit." Wow. Okay, so now it looks like we're talking about the Tria Prima. Now, I can tell you that having seen Steve's video and what's going on, what he's talking about, you will see that these 2 fish are very important and they play a very important role in this emblem and what Michael Meyer is trying to convey to us. So it's time for the Hermetic Journeys team to chime in on this emblem. It's my favorite part of the video. Just love it because you get 3 really unique perspectives, and then we have Steve Kalec's perspective, right? The alchemist. So it's really cool. So let's get going here, man. Take it away, Nathan.
Oh, hello there, Tony G and Hermetic Journeys. How are you? Jake the dog, your boy Nathan, here on top of Mount Rubidoux. Woo! Riverside, California. Emblem 22. I love the transition between them, man. How they really tie into each other, which really kind of hints at the alchemical process. It's not just a static thing, it's a movement, right? It's happening. The man and the woman come together to form a circle. Pregnancy, the union of two seemingly opposite things to create a third thing. 3 closer to 1 than 2. So she's pregnant, right? Doing cooking, the woman's work, bun in the oven. Very fun. I love how in 21 the geometry is set, the two-dimensional figuring it out on that plane. And then we have the living thing, right? The thing in motion, the thing that's more than that coming into play with her. I mean, she's cooking there too, but she's also pregnant. So a couple things are going on. And behind her, we have Pisces. Astrology coming in. Astrology, right? It's not about the stars. It's about our understanding of the stars and our place in the cosmos with the cosmos as the cosmos. Very cool. The cat. Not looking at the fish. Very unlike a cat. Gosh, I'm sweaty. It's cool. Yeah, as if to say, like, you know, it's the intelligence. It's something higher than, not necessarily better than, but different than the animalistic instinct, which contemplates the higher spheres, the higher realms. And again, higher, not in a dominating better than, but different than faculty. And that's what we as human beings, as alchemical vessels, if you will, are blessed with, right? Access to all the stuff, the good, the bad, and all that. Hopefully we can see that good and bad are just judgment points within the thing and move in the proper direction with the flow, if you will. Yeah, flow. Anyway, super fun stuff. Oh, dude, how about the figures, the shapes by her feet? How they're like 3-dimensional things, and the other guy had 2-dimensional. So cool. So much stuff going on. So fun. Anyway, we're out. Much love. Be good to each other. Peace.
My dear friend Nathan, wow. You always make us look at things that I never consider, and it's always profound. Man, amazing job. Thank you so very, very much. And of course, our best, all of us. I mean, people make comments about wanting to pet Jake. So hey, you know, we all want to pet Jake. So you'll have to pet him for us. All right, next up we have Tamas. Oh my goodness. Tamas has taken something from the discourse, the first sentence of the discourse, which we really didn't look into that much, and something about these unusual statues called the Hermai, and they were placed at crossroads to point people in the right direction. This is a really interesting thing. Check this out. Take it away, Tamas.
In the first sentence of the discourse, Dr. Meyer mentions certain statues of Hermes that were placed at crossroads to direct the travelers. These are the Hermai. We have many vase paintings and little statues of them from the 5th century BC and onwards, but there is no full-size archaic Herma that is completely intact. They were either vandalized, eroded, or just Roman-era copies like these. One of the last books that mention Hermai that were placed next to roads is the 2nd century AD, the description of Greece from Pausanias. So they existed for at least 700 years. The two most unusual features of a Herma statue are first, the vertical and the horizontal axes that meet as the heart, and the erected phallus. The first is explained by column 12 of the Derveni papyrus. The 2004 version, from Gábor Beteg, translated Uranus as heaven and Kronos as time, but let's read this ancient text without that interpretation. The context is that the author was citing Orphic poems and was also interpreting them. So it goes. And the next line goes like this: so that he, Zeus, may rule on the lovely abode of snow-capped Olympus. Olympus and Kronos are the same. Those who think that Olympus and Uranus are the same are entirely mistaken, for they do not know that Uranus cannot be taller than wider. But if someone were to call Kronos tall, he would not be wrong at all. You see, taller than wider means vertical, while wider than taller horizontal. So Uranus is horizontal, while Kronos is vertical. But why do the vertical and the horizontal axes of a Hermas statue meet at the heart? For this, let me cite from Jean Klein from the book Ease of Being. As long as we are involved in perception, we live in time. That is, we live only on the horizontal plane. But silence is timeless. It is at the center of where time and timeless meet, where the horizontal and the vertical come together. This point is the heart. But what about the other weird motif of the Hermai, the erected phallus? I think that in most texts to which Michael Meyer refers, the penis is a metaphor for the physical body of a human being, and as such it is related to element earth. Let's see what sources support this claim. In the Arcana Arcanissima he writes, "The genitals of Osiris are those black and useless dregs, which indeed at first have acquired some growth, but after the dissolution they must be separated from the rest of the body, which is pure and clean." So he calls the penis of Osiris black earth, then he mentions that it acquired some growth. And indeed, in the yogic tradition, the sensation of the body becomes expanded borderless during the sadhana. This explains why the phallus of the archaic Hermai is mostly erected, because it's a metaphor for the expanded bodily sensation, which is our natural state when no suppression is present. Michael Meyer also mentioned the separation of it from the body, which is depicted in many mythological stories as castration. This simply means that the identification with the physical body disappears during the sadhana. Another evidence for the phallus in the above texts being a metaphor for the physical body is that Michael Meyer made it clear in many of his books that the element earth is Apollo, or the god of the sun. And on column 13 of the Derveni papyrus it is stated that the phallus of Uranus is the sun itself, because on the sky the sun represents the creative force that creates life. It's likely that the Hermai did not only show the path to where the travelers wanted to go, but they also pointed to the direction which would have been the best for them, to the heart.
Tamas, that was really incredible. Your research is stellar. Dude, you're incredible. In any case, loved it. I hope you guys got as much out of it as I did. Very, very interesting. Now, next up, we've got Maddi. Take it away, Maddi.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me back again. What I really loved about this one was the epigram, the part about correcting the spots of Saturn's face and making it white as snow, and that the water must be such as things require. The motto telling you to do women's work really sealed it. Who is the lady in the picture? In the emblem? For me, it is Keridwen. Now, who was Keridwen? Well, she was a lady. She was married to the lord of the lands around Lake Bala in Snowdonia Mountains of Wales. His name was Tegidvol. He was a giant. So we know there's something supernatural about this story. They have 2 children, a daughter named Crearwi, which means purity, and she is beautiful. Their son is Avagdi, which means utter darkness, and he is not. To fix him, to fix the spots on his face, she goes to the physicians of Mithvai. She herself is also an herbalist, an alchemist, someone who works with divination, and she knows how these things work. She's a green witch. Her spell, the recipe she wants from them, is for the elixir of wisdom. Her thoughts being, if he was wise enough, maybe people could overlook just how utterly dark and ugly he was. So they give her the recipe. To create this elixir, it's going to take more than one person, and she enlists the aid of 2 people in the village, Morta the blind man and Gwienbach, the little boy who leads him around. Their 2 tasks are for one of them to feed the fire, keep the wood burning under there, and the other one has to stir the brew. In the meantime, she's running around collecting the herbs at their proper time and adding them to the mix in its proper time. The water must be such as things require. As a green witch, she's one of the usual people in the village, so we are doing women's work. We are creating something in the cauldron, something to be taken in, to be consumed. At the end of the year and the day that this brew will take, what's supposed to happen are 3 drops of wisdom, the 3 drops of Awen from last time, remember them? Will pop out and give him all the wisdom of the world. The price to pay is that the cauldron will split in half and it will poison all the land around it with the dregs that are left at the bottom. She's willing to pay the price. So she works for that year and a day, and when the day comes and she has put in the last ingredient, she sets Avagdi at the side of the cauldron so that he's ready to take the 3 drops, and she sits down to rest. Unfortunately, she falls asleep. She's awakened by the screaming of the cauldron, which has split. Now, depending on which version of the story you read, either Gwienbach has pushed the Vagdi out of the way and taken the drops for himself, or they have jumped out of this sizzling hot cauldron, landed on his thumb, and like any child would, he stuck it in his mouth. Either way, he has now consumed the 3 drops of wisdom, and she now wants to kill him. So she leads him on a chase. He starts to run because he knows she's after him. First he turns into a hare and she into a greyhound. They run through the realm of land. Key 1. He takes to the water as a salmon. She follows him as an otter, the realm of sea. Key 2. He takes to the air in a great leap as a wren. She as a hawk. Key 3. He now knows the wisdom of the 3 realms. She's not done. He knows he's in trouble, and from afar, from above, he looks down and he sees a farmer's field has been harvested, and sitting next to the winnowing board is a pile of seed, a pile of grain. He jumps into it and becomes one of them, and to his horror, thinking he has now evaded her, he hears the scratching and sees the feet and beak of a black-crested hen. She is patiently eating her way through the pile until she gets to him, and she swallows him whole. Now she carries him in her womb for 9 months. There's the lady. Things come in 3s. We've seen one cauldron. The womb is also another cauldron, or rather the cauldron is a symbol for the womb. After the 9 months, she gives birth to this beautiful baby with a radiant brow. Of course, he's illuminated. He's got all the wisdom. She says, "What a radiant brow." And in Welsh, that is Taliesin, which becomes his name. She no longer wants to kill him, so she puts him in a coracle. Coracles are little wooden vessels covered in leather that are seaworthy. So she puts him in, wraps him up, sends him on his way. He floats around the oceans for 80 years until he is caught in a salmon weir, a trap in a stream. Salmon being a symbol of wisdom. When he is rescued, he starts to recite poetry because he still has all that wisdom and becomes one of the greatest bards ever known. So this is why she is also known as the mother of the bards. So, if we look back at the emblem, what do we see? Well, we see the keys to knowledge. We see the river in the back. It always means a journey. It's your journey, right? From utter darkness to purity. And we see the 2, I know they're trout, but if you squint, they could kind of look like salmon, in their own little coracle, their own little round basin. So, no matter which tradition you're following, there are similarities, and truthfully, what are we trying to do? It's shadow work. We'd like to get rid of the shadow and become pure, but we never really do. It's taking that gross material and purifying it, turning lead into gold, all the same. So, is she real? Is she divine? Does it even matter? She's an initiatrix. She takes us through all those transformations, helping us get to that purity, get to that gold. So the real question is, what's in your cauldron? What are you brewing? And what are you going to do with those 3 drops of Olin when you get them? I'd love to know.
Maddi, wow. I have no idea what's in my cauldron. I can only hope that it's transformational. Just kidding. That was awesome. Thank you so very much. Fascinating parallels between all these different stories and myths. And just love what you're doing. Thank you so very much. Now, let's move on with the more alchemical expression of Emblem 22. Of course, using the help of my dear friend, Steve Kalec. So let's take a look at the epigram. We haven't even looked at the epigram yet. That motto is so loaded with stuff, and the image itself is loaded. And again, the white lead component of that motto, we're going to get to that a little later with Steve. Okay, so let's take a look at the epigram. Dear Count, if you would please recite the epigram to us.
Why, I thought you would never ask, Tony G. Here we go. If much with little pains you would affect the livid spots of Saturn's face correct, and make as white as snow. When this is done, a woman may the rest perform alone. Cocked then as she, placing her pots on fire, but the water must be such as things require.
Now what's all this about? The livid spots of Saturn's face correct? And white lead? What's going on here? Well, I'm not going to speak to the white lead. Steve's going to do that. But I am going to speak to Saturn's face and what Saturn has to do with this stuff, okay? Well, way back in the 1600s, the farthest planet that people knew about was the planet Saturn. The planets Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, well, they didn't know they existed, because although they had telescopes, like Galileo's telescope and Newton's telescope, they couldn't see those planets. The telescopes weren't powerful enough. Why am I talking about this? Well, because in alchemy, for those of you who don't know, the planets, or the planetary energies, are associated with specific metals, all right? And we're going to go over those. First, the sun was affiliated with gold. It was gold, masculine, right. The moon with silver, although sometimes, depending on the alchemical text you read, they do mention Mercury. The planet Mercury, the substance Mercury, or Quicksilver as it was called back then. Venus represented copper. Earth, antimony. Mars, iron. Jupiter, tin. And Saturn, lead. We're getting somewhere here. Now, lead, of course, was an impure metal. It was perceived as a metal that would eventually, over thousands and thousands of years, make its way to become gold, right? It strove to do that. So hence, the alchemical tenet turned lead into gold, which, of course, is a metaphor for becoming a more evolved human being, right? And this is all due to the concept of correspondences. Everything corresponds in alchemy. Everything corresponds. Everything is linked to something else. And that's something that we've learned over the years of studying Atalanta Fugiens. So you can see the topic of correspondences has great sway here in terms of the relationship of these metals and to planets, certainly Saturn in this particular instance. This also harkens back to Emblem 11 that we looked at, make Latona white and tear up her books. Now, if you recall, Latona was actually a play on a word that represented an alloy, a lead alloy. It was latonem, E-M. Count Michael, the clever little guy that he is, changed the E in latonem to an A, latonam, and then the English translation became Latona, who was a goddess, okay? And so Latona actually represented a lead alloy. Interesting, huh? Just like, to me, the woman in this emblem represents the alchemical experiment, the process of creating the Philosopher's Stone. So Latona, in this instance, whiten Latona and tear up her books. I'm not getting into, essentially tear up her books meant you can't just read about alchemy, you have to do the work. You have to get into the lab and do it, okay? Like Steve Kalec, right? But essentially we're talking about a similar thing, making Latona white and, white lead in the instance of the motto. And Saturn's face, making Saturn's face white. You see? So this emblem has something to do with lead and processing of lead or doing something with lead to purify it or to create something else. All right? So we're getting somewhere, right? Hope this is making sense. Stay with me. Remember, we're cooking here. We're really cooking. Get it? And in Emblem 11, we also discovered that Queen Elizabeth suffered from smallpox. Why am I bringing up Queen Elizabeth the First? Well, this is very important because she suffered from smallpox, which scarred her face. And so, at the time, there was a cosmetic available known as ceruse. Now, ceruse was a concoction of lead, vinegar, and water, all right? And what it did was it covered up the blemishes on people's faces and made their faces kind of white, which is interesting because if you see some of the portraiture of Queen Elizabeth, she looks almost white as a ghost. But that could also be symbolic because she was supposed to be the Virgin Queen, right? Okay, so unfortunately for our dear Queen Elizabeth I, the use of ceruse as a cosmetic may have been one of the things that killed her, because people at the time used it to cover up blemishes and stuff like that. Unfortunately, it was made with lead. They got lead poisoning and got sick and died. So okay, so now we gotta tie all this up, and Steve's gonna do that for us, all right? So of course, when I put this emblem together, I was doing my research and everything. I was like, okay, I got some of this, but there's a big part of it I don't understand, and that is the white lead. And Steve, of course, I sent an email to my Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I said, hey, Steve, help me out here. I'm drowning. I don't know what's going on with this white lead. I don't understand what's going on. So Steve, of course, responded immediately, and he created a video, too, which we're going to see momentarily. But here's what he had to say. Yes, of course, the metals have their planetary attributes and rulership. Here, Saturn is lead, and we are speaking of making white lead carbonate of the acetate path. White lead is the basic lead carbonate, and there's the formula there. It is a complex salt containing both carbonate and hydroxide ions. White lead occurs naturally as a mineral, in which context it is known as hydrocerosite. Ah, ceruse, right? Hydrocerosite. When I saw that, I went, Queen Elizabeth, right? All right, so ceruse, so that's this lead thing. Now he's going to tell us how they made ceruse, or hydrocerosite. It's really interesting. Check it out. In olden times, lead was placed in earthen vessels over sharp vinegar, and after it had acquired some sort of rust, which it commonly did in about 10 days, they opened the vessels and scraped this off, as it were in a sort of foulness. They then placed the vinegar over lead again, repeating the same method of scraping it until it had wholly dissolved. What has been scraped off, they then beat to a powder and boiled for a long time, and what at last subsided at the bottom of the vessel was ceruse. Wow. Check that out, okay? So at this point, let's take a look at the video that Steve made for us for this particular emblem. It's really, really incredible. So take it away, Steve.
Hello, my good friend Tony G, and greetings to all your viewers. This is a fascinating path in the separation of the essentials of minerals and metals. I used nature's own white lead called cerusite, or lead carbonate. The alchemical process on Saturn is most elegant in its unfoldment. The mineral is ground to a powder, and distilled vinegar is poured over it and allowed to incubate in warmth, which allows for an alchemical vegetal mineral evolution. The mineral begins to grow like vegetation. I allowed my matter to evolve for a 3-year period in which I patiently kept its undisturbed even heat. Of course, there are cleansings and feeding processes involved. We can clearly see the reddening and the ripening of our lead, becoming an evolved creature as the philosophical dragon which the ancients described. It is truly a wonderment to behold and see the events transpire in our vessels as the reddening deepens and our little fluffy beast coagulates out of its own blood, its own water. The distillation train was set up, and our philosophical dragon was next distilled to receive its spirit and soul, its alchemical mercury and sulfur. It was a joy to behold the breath of the dragon as seen in the condenser. This breath burst forth in cycles as vapors condensing, what the ancients called the philosophical wine. When all the philosophical wine came over, the heat was increased, and the oil of lead began to come over, which was collected separately. My heat source was a 1,000-watt hot plate, and the vessel was placed in the sandbag to keep the heat stable and steady. To receive the oil, I needed more heat, and I had to insulate my vessel. The philosophical wine is known as the golden water, or aquafotens, or stinking water, yet its aroma is pleasant with the volatility of acetone. It circulates even at room temperature. This is next distilled to receive the spirit of philosophical wine. The earth remaining contains the toxins, which is calcined and driven off to give us the salt of lead. When my vessel cooled, I turned it over and beheld Saturn with its rings. How cool and uncanny is that, since Saturn is the ruler of lead. Such is alchemy. All best to everyone. Bye for now.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Really, I truly appreciate this, and I'm sure people out there watching do too. It really gives us insight into the alchemical experiment. We see exactly what's going on when working with these incredible substances, and the results are just so mind-boggling. Beautiful stuff. Thank you very much, Steve. I don't know what we'd do without you, but thank you so much. Okay, so let's kind of conclude with Steve's final thoughts on this particular experiment. Michael Meyer writes, by coction we mean the ripening of the raw parts which, thanks to Vulcan, within the vessel of philosophy. Now Vulcan, of course, is the Roman god of fire, so that's what Michael Meyer is referencing here. There's all these code words and symbols and stuff like that, so Vulcan is fire within the, to cook the ingredients in the alchemical vessel that's sealed. He continues here. Thus, like the woman who brings to maturity the fish in her cooking, this is the subject of the work being dissolved and macerated in our water as a strong vinegar, and then coagulating and being fixed hermetically in a sealed vessel. This philosophical preparation yields for us a philosophical matter as a lead acetate, which, after distillation, gives us what we call the philosophic wine. After rectification, being further distillations, gives us the sulfur and the mercury of Saturn as the oil, and the spirit of Saturn, our two fishes. So the two fish represent the sulfur and the mercury, okay, the oil and the alcohol in the experiment. This is really cool, right? So that's the meaning of the two fish. Let's continue. This spirit is a living acetone, and thus this spirit of Saturn is considered by many as the spirit of philosophic wine, since it was distilled from an allegorical philosophic wine mentioned above. So we've got this scene of simplicity, this domestic scene with a pregnant woman about to cook some fish. Right? In the background is a river and a cat that's ignoring the fish. It seems like it's so simple, but it's, oh my God, it's so complicated, right? There's so much symbology going on here. I mean, Nathan's observations concerning the linkage between the emblems, between each emblem, I absolutely love that. It's so fascinating. And his observations concerning the three-dimensionality and the more living realm of Emblem 22 as compared to Emblem 21, which is kind of the mathematical expression of it. Fascinating stuff, Nathan. Thank you so much. And of course, Tamas, with your observations on the Hermai statues and how it, pointing people in the right direction and having to do with the heart, right? It's such a beautiful thing and fascinating research, of course, as always, Tamas. Awesome. And by the way, Tamas did that video. I did not do it. He put that video together entirely. All right. And then, of course, Maddi, I love how you take these Celtic Druidic stories and how they align with these emblems. It's so fascinating. I mean, we know nothing evolves in a vacuum, right? And truly appreciate everything you do. Love the connections here. With all these different myths and stories. Absolutely love it. And of course, Steve Kalec. Steve, your knowledge of alchemy as an alchemist, of course, is so profound. And letting us get a glimpse into the work that you do in your lab is so helpful to us understanding the intricacies of Atalanta Fugiens. Because they're, we're not alchemists, but you are. And the fact that you help us, we truly appreciate it. Truly appreciate it. We're very blessed to have all of you on board. I'm so humbled that everybody wants to be part of this. Everybody wants to help. Everyone wants to learn and grow. So it's just awesome. Really, thank you to everyone. And thank you to the new subscribers. I hope this is what you expected. I hope you're enjoying it. And we'll see you soon. Emblem 23. Oh, so excited, right? So stay safe and stay well and all that good stuff. And we'll see you soon.